Welcome back, golfers, and today we're going to be talking driver versus irons and looking at what things you can do from a setup position to help you optimize both of these impacts. So something I get asked a lot when coaching is, when I'm making swing changes with people, the question that always comes back to me is it exactly the same with my driver? Now, for me, it is, but there's something important we need to understand is that the impact of driver versus iron is different, right? The impact is created differently. Irons we're trying to hit downward on the golf ball. Driver we are trying to hit somewhat more level to up on the golf ball, okay? So how that impact geometry is created is different. Now I like to think of it as the swing stays the same, or the intention with the swing stays the same, but we make all the necessary changes at setup to adapt from the iron to the driver. I think it's the simplest way to think about it. I think most golfers have way too many moving parts and things going on anyway. So I like to be able to go, right, let's keep things as simple as possible. Can we fix a setup position that's going to change those launch angles and ball flight characteristics, okay? So let's start with an iron. What are we looking to do with an iron, and how would we want to set up to help promote the best impact? Well, firstly, we're looking to hit down on the golf ball. Okay, we need that golf club and the club head descending down onto the golf ball at the moment of impact, and ideally our low point, so where the golf club reaches its lowest point, is after the golf ball. Okay, so we've got some sticks on the ground here to help demonstrate this and give you some guidelines. Now, what I've just got is a stick down the target line, okay, straight down this mat here where I'm aiming. I've also got one just inside my lead foot, which would actually run up to the armpit here, okay? So the low point of the swing is measured from the left armpit, okay? We keep it there really simple. It's measured from the left armpit. So if I was to line the club up at this point, that would be the 0 mark, okay? So if we're trying to hit down on an iron, right, we need that golf ball ideally back of this arc, okay? Back of the low point of the arc, which would then move the golf ball back closer to somewhere in our sternum here. A good rule of thumb I like to go by here would be that the golf ball with I've got an 8 iron in my hand here, so an iron / mid iron would be somewhat 3 balls back of the low point. So I'm then bringing this club back here, and you go, that ball would now sit directly underneath my sternum there as a reference. So straight away I've brought the ball back, which allows me then to be able to descend the club more downward onto the golf ball, okay, and then it reaches its lowest point much later, or its lined up state much later, meaning I'm going to get a better ball turf contact, okay. So that's the first thing. Ball position is hugely influential on how the club moves into the golf ball, and obviously the differences we want to see through irons and driver. You could start to see here the ball further back with driver, you could argue is going to launch it out just way too low and it's not going to get in the air, okay? That's ball position. A couple other things we want to look out for, and that's the relationship between our centres. Now I'd say centres between basically the centre of the sternum and the centre of the pelvis, okay? Upper and lower centres. Where these are going to be hugely influential on where the club hits the ground and the low point of the swing. All right, so from a setup position with an iron, we can go iron here. I'm just going to move these 2 balls out of the way. So we're going to go with the back ball position here. What I would like to see with these centres is that the lower centre, the pelvis, would sit just inside the left ankle. So this would actually be a fraction forward of where the ball is, okay? And then the upper centre would have somewhat between 0 degrees of tilt to 5 degrees of tilt. Okay, an ever so slight variance there. If you start to tilt this torso too much, all of a sudden you can see where my head starts to move back, and I'm arguably going to start to bring the low point further back. Okay, so not ideal for the clean contacts. So it's a really good reference here of making sure that your pelvis ever so slightly sits ahead of the golf ball, and then the torso hangs directly over the golf ball, okay? And again, bearing in mind we're trying to hit the ground after the golf ball, have the low point further forward, having our centres over the golf ball / forward is going to help us achieve that more downward approach into the golf ball and obviously get that great shaft lean and compression we're all going to be looking for. So these centres are hugely important and where they are. And I guess the one thing I would see on a daily basis would be how most people's centres sit back here. Weight gets too far on the right foot, okay, and the centre's too far back, meaning they're going to start to hit the ground too early. So a really good reference from a weight or a pressure point of view, something I always like to see with golfers would be they have a little bit more pressure on this left side or their lead side. So you're going to feel somewhat 55 to 60% of your pressure sitting more on this lead side, again, so we can keep the low point further forward. The further back this is, the more likely we are to hit the ground too early, okay? And the biggest thing you see amongst tour professionals or the best ball strikers versus the ones that suffer with ball striking is how much further forward, the pelvis in particular, but how much further forward things are at the moment of impact and how much further forward they continue to move through the impact area, okay? So it's super important to be able to strike down on your irons, okay? So noting where these things are. Now, on the other side of that spectrum, obviously, you don't want to get things too far ahead, right? Because now it's just not going to be optimal for launch and club face control. This is going to be a horrible kind of squeezy shot that's just not going to get any air or height to it at all, which we don't want. So there is always another other side of that spectrum we have to be mindful of, okay? So just to recap that, iron setup, ball would be back of the low point. Okay, so a really good rule of thumb would be 3 balls back underneath the sternum here, okay? Low point is the left arm. We are going to have the centre of the pelvis slightly further forward here with the torso that would sit on top of the golf ball, and we're playing again between 0 degrees of tilt and somewhere around 5 degrees. You start to increase that, run the risk of dropping it back. Some really easy check-up points there. So coupled with the ball position would be the shaft angle. So where the shaft sits in relation to the club head at address. Now what we're looking to create is this inline state. Now where I say inline state is from the left shoulder down to the grip, down to the head, would be in a straight line, okay? Diagonally slightly across the body. So we get this nice handle in front of head look, right? That's that shaft lean, that compression that everyone's desiring, okay? Now, the reason this is so important is because, like I said, what we're looking for is the golf club to line up, or be at its lowest point, post-impact, okay? So it would line up, it would hit the golf ball, and it would line up post-impact here somewhere. So it's its lowest point afterwards. That's when it then starts to come out of the ground. If the golf club is reaching its inline state too early, it's already on its way up. So now we're never going to get that downward blow onto the golf ball. We're going to start to want to hit up on the golf ball, which is not going to be ideal when the ball is on the ground, okay? So having this inline state where the handle is ahead of the head, presetting this at address, gives us a better head start of then as we come into impact, being able to deliver the same type of loft we started with there. Obviously, it's going to be ideally a bit less with the added shaft lean and how things have moved forward. Okay, and then it would line up later as that golf club starts to release through into the finish position. Okay, so with the ball back, again, a really good reference actually, I really like this one, is the butt of the club points up towards your left hip. Okay, regardless of where the ball is, and we'll start to touch on this when we bring driver into play here, regardless of where the ball is, the butt of the club comes up to the left hip. So we've got this nice inline state. Okay, remember, golf is played on tilted angles. It's not played on a straight line. So therefore we have to have some angles here at setup. It's on an inclined plane. So this is going to set the club on that inclined plane. This would set it on a straight line, which is not what we're looking to do. And then lastly, you've got the shaft lean, okay? So what we'd want to see would be the inline state there of that shaft as previously described. So again, the handle ahead of the club head is a really nice reference. And we've got this nice inline state of the left shoulder down into the into the club head here, and that's going to keep the handle ahead of the head as described to get that compression and that shaft lean. You can see there again, anything further back, you're going to start to want to add loft and probably start hitting on the up. So this nice inline state to the shaft as well. So 3 really easy key points for you guys to check in and amongst your iron setup to make sure you've got or giving yourself the best chance to be able to strike those irons really cleanly. Okay, so now how do we promote a more upward to level attack angle with driver relative to a more downward with A-time? First thing we're going to look at here is the ball position, okay? So as discussed, with an A-time, we want to see the ball position back of the low point, so where the club is lining up much later. Now with driver, we're going to move the golf ball slightly further forward, and I would use the reference as being on the low point, okay? So the ball would sit directly underneath your left armpit, okay? That would be at low point, because we are looking to hit somewhat up, but not too up. I actually think most golfers try and hit too far up on the golf ball in general, and we'll touch on that in a little bit later in this video and something to help with that. But we want to start as a baseline here of being the golf ball on the low point. So straight away, the club now is already set in its inline state, okay? So this, with a ball on a tee peg and with a driver, it is okay for that golf club to be hit more in line. Now, never really looking to hit it out of line this way, because we're going to still add too much dynamic loft and too much spin. So we're still going to see an element of that handle being ever so slightly ahead of the driver head ideally, okay? But it's much less than what we would have seen with an iron, okay? So remember what I said about the iron and the reference of the left hip. The butt of the club always points at the left hip regardless of where the ball is, okay? So we're just going to see now with driver, I've still got some shaft lean, but a lot less than what I would have had with an 8-iron when the ball is further back and the butt is pointing up the left hip, okay? So it's a really, really good reference for you guys, regardless of where the ball is, okay? The butt of the club points up towards the left hip. So we've always, again, got this inline state of club head grip up into the left shoulder. We've not got this look here. It's something I come across a lot with guys on the range, you know, this kind of handle back idea there with a driver and irons as well. It's why people struggle with contact and low point, and also then face control. Okay, so ball position would actually sit on the low point. Now, next we're then going to look at how the centers relate to this, okay? So we're looking to promote more of an upward approach compared to the iron. So there's some things we can do here with the centers, pelvis and sternum, line those up slightly different to help promote the more upward angle of attack rather than try to do it mechanically, okay, or falsely, as you say, manufacture it, okay? So what we're going to want to see here is I would actually still want to see the lower center just inside the left heel. Never really want to see it back of center or closer to the right heel. Really inhibits how we can start to load into that backswing. And let's bear in mind most golfers struggle with hitting too down on a cross with driver. That being back would start to promote some of this. So what I would want to see would actually still be the belt buckle sort of sitting underneath in line with the left ankle, the lead ankle. But then we're going to add a little bit more spine tilt, okay? And the reason that spine tilts more is because the fact the pelvis stays forward. So you can see the more I kind of slide the hips, if you like, the more my torso starts to tip, okay? Now we worked on a kind of a 0 to 5 degree tilt with the irons. We're going to go on like a 10 degree tilt here with the with the driver, okay? So I've still got the pelvis forward, the ball's in line, I've got a nice inline state with the club, but I've now just got a little bit more tilt as a result with the upper body. So this now is presetting some more upward elements into the golf ball. It's going to help me hit more up on it relative to an iron when my centres are more over the ball or stacked on top of each other. Because coming into the golf ball, if I maintained this structure, right, and the pelvis led the torso, which is ideally what we'd want to see, okay, we always want to see the pelvis winning the race relative to the chest. Okay, I'm going to be presenting slightly more shoulder tilt at impact with the driver than I am an iron, but I've also set up in that way, right? So I'm returning somewhat similar, not the same, somewhat similar. I'm giving myself a head start from the setup position, which is going to help create more of that tilt, which is going to help create more of that launch, then for the golf ball to launch higher and not be hit downward, okay? So that centre reference is really key there in how that differs from the iron versus the driver, because now essentially I can make exactly the same golf swing from a 7-iron to a driver, and I'm changing the impact through the fact that I've moved the ball position and changed my tilts. Really simple and easy ways to be able to keep things clean and simple. I just don't like the idea of, you know, almost having two swings, right? Trying to swing differently with a different club. There's a lot of variables going on. If we can change the setup, and the setup is something we can monitor every single day we practice. Something you can stick a camera in front of you, you can stick these sticks down for your references, and you know exactly where the ball is every single time. You know exactly where the handle is every single time, and you know exactly where your tilts are meant to be every single time. So it's really simple. We've got 3 checkpoints there that we can nail in every single time, changing from iron to driver, and then we just make the same type of movement, and the impact is going to be completely changed because we've preset the impact change. We're now not having to move differently to change that impact, okay? And something I'm going to touch on now, when I sort of alluded to this a minute ago about you know, not wanting to have two different swings, and how I feel that most golfers try and hit too up on the golf ball. Okay, I'm going to run through a couple of scenarios now that I see on a day-to-day basis, and a really good drill I'd advise everyone to do if they really want to get better drivers of the golf ball. Now, the first one I would see would be that golf ball would actually be well outside the body. The golf ball would sit almost outside of the 0 line. Okay, so now that golf club is going to be heavily trying to work on the up, okay? But not only that, relative to the straight line, okay, the down the target line, the more I move that ball forward, the more across the golf ball I'm going to swing, or across the baseline I'm going to swing. So I'm actually presetting a lot of slice pieces by having that golf ball really far forward. And when that ball is also forward, what you're going to see from golfers is the handle is hugely back, like this. Again, another huge slicing piece from a setup point of view of where the shaft and the head are going to want to swing through the golf ball here on that down the line view. You can see where it's wanting to almost be preset in this direction. So I think people have the ball way too far forward. That all of a sudden starts to bring the chest over as well in another breath here. The chest goes over, and we're now again presetting more slice pieces in. So now we're going to be hitting more down, more across the golf ball, more weaker shots, right? So ball gets outside, setup really gets off, okay? So then the adjustment there would be to use these sticks and these references to understand where the low point of the golf club, or where the golf club actually is, okay? Where the low point, actually is, and not where you think it is, okay? The more forward, the more down and across, the more slicey that golf ball is going to be. So it will initially feel further back, okay, in the stance, but that's then how you would counteract that is the tilt, all right? Again, if it's forward, you're probably not having so much tilt because you're just not going to hit the golf ball from here, okay? You're probably a little bit more like this, chest over pelvis, which is not what we want to see with the driver, okay? Secondly, and this is probably my biggest bugbear, in the modern day game. I think anything higher than these white castle tees should be banned. I do not see any good in those whatsoever. There's perhaps a conversation there for those that really need a bit of extra help launching the golf ball. Okay, but what I see from these really high tee pegs is golfers having to really sacrifice their tilts, sacrifice their body angle to try and hit so far up on the golf ball. The ball's so far above the head. I've actually got one in my pocket here, and you'll be able to see it from the camera angle. And these sort of orange ones that I see people use a lot. You know, if we look at that there from a camera angle perspective, that golf ball is so far above the head of the driver. Like down the line there, you'll be able to see the whole golf ball over the top of the head of the driver. And when I'm swinging, if you think about that, right? So I've got the golf club on the ground. Okay. Now at some point, I'm going to have to start to raise, tilt back to try and get the golf club on the up to hit it. Okay. So there's so much going on there to try and make contact, and then people just end up sacrificing all their body movements to do it. Now granted, because it's so far off the ground, you're going to get away with some of it, okay? But then we start to see how that massively affects their iron play and the shots they can hit or have available to them, all right? And if you think about you constantly moving back and away, loads of power leakage. Again, the more back you're moving, the more you're probably going to start slicing it, okay? And you don't actually start to get any distance. So one of my favorite drills to help you golfers launch the golf ball in the right way. Okay, this will be the best way of looking at this. Launch the golf ball in the right way with driver. So being able to deliver the appropriate amount of loft at impact and use the loft of the golf club to launch it rather than bending or tilting too much behind the golf ball to try and launch it, all right? Small tee peg, got a blue one here. You can actually go really low if you really want to. Depending on your skill level, you can actually start to practice off like an iron tee peg or even off the deck, see how comfortable you feel, okay? But this is a great one. I'm gonna tee it down really low, okay? Tee it down really low. And you can see there how it barely covers the center of the face, right? But what we're gonna show you now, and you'll be able to see on the data that comes up, is that this will still have a positive attack angle. This will still launch high enough, okay, and it's going to get in the air. All right, most people see that and think, nope, that's going to just go into the ground. I'm never going to be able to get that airborne. Okay, but again, what it's going to teach you is to deliver the appropriate amount of loft. So 10-degree driver here. It's going to teach me to deliver somewhat around 10 degrees. Now, obviously, I've got some sort of speed to the club. That's going to still launch the golf ball. And you're going to find that your driving gets seriously good if you can get good at doing this drill. Low tee peg. Okay, learn to flight it, hit it high with the appropriate loft and the appropriate setup rather than trying to hit it high through changing the way your body moves through the golf ball, okay? So I'm gonna hit one now and we'll bring the data up on the screen so you can see it. We'll show you the launch angle, we'll show you the attack angle, that it can still actually get positive attack angles, high launches and get this golf ball in the air. So what we're going to see here, even from this low tee peg, is we're going to get a level to slightly positive attack angle, okay, with a launch that's going to come out somewhat close to the driver, so around 10 degrees I'd expect to see here. So we don't need to tee it up high to hit up on it or to even launch the golf ball. So same setup principles, ball on low point, shaft in inline state, a little bit more tilt to the spine, and go. Good height that. So there we go. So 0.2 attack angle. So it's slightly on the up, right? Relatively level, but slightly on the up. And I've launched it at 11.5. Okay, so there's plenty of loft there on that shot. You don't need to tee it up silly high. Okay, change your angle to try and find the face. Low tee. The best driver exercise any of you guys can do, I promise you that. You might struggle with it to start with, but persevere. You'll see how much height you can start to generate. Learn to get the loft on the club in the right way and just watch that dispersion come down. I honestly promise you. So there you have it. Some really easy ways for you guys to adjust from driver to irons, how you can use some setup checkpoints to really optimize the impact and the launch conditions of the golf ball that we're looking for, okay? And that low T-peg drill, by the way, guys, persevere with that, because I promise you, when you start to get that, your driving will improve dramatically, okay? As always, thank you for watching. Any questions, please fire into the comments. If you like the video, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up. And please, please, please subscribe to the channel, because it really does mean a lot and it helps me provide more content to you guys to play better golf. See you next time.